Tbilisi 2.2, which basically is the third event this year. And so before to start the conversation, I will do like a very fast brief about ETH Tbilisi. So ETH Tbilisi is basically the Ethereum community which is born to make ETH events cyberpunk again. So basically, we are focused on conversations that are about props, so censorship resistance, security, and privacy, and open source, obviously. and so, in every event, which we're doing every month, we are inviting basically people who are approaching very important and difficult challenges in the space. And of course, today, we have probably, as we have in the title, I think one of the biggest challenges of this decade, which is actually self-sovereign and open source AI, which is something that literally will reshape our life for the next more than a decade, actually, and is very important in my opinion. So I'm super proud, actually, and happy to introduce Marco Chiappetta, Chiappetta on X, and to start this conversation. Thank you so much to be here.
Thank you for inviting me. And so I work at Tether. I lead QVAC. QVAC is Tether's effort to build a sovereign, local and decentralized AI, and we'll see what it means decentralized. And the reason I'm here is because I think we have very aligning values and commitments for the future of technology in general. I think anyone who is in this room believes that open source and in general software that you own is extremely important for the future of humanity, honestly, in general. And we cannot just depend on, we've been depending on big tech for a long time. I think AI is one more, wave where we have a chance to detach ourselves more and more from that.
Let me start to wrap up in this way, okay? Which is a very fundamental question, and then we can start like a discussion. Do we really want to trust? Because this is also like a take that I did in an event like back in early 2018. So do we really, you see how are people using AI these days for everything? Like from decision making to, I don't know, is this news real? To everything. So do we really want to trust the providers?
That's an extremely good question. And so, how many of you had SEO problems? Like maybe your stuff was not coming up in the Google search or things like that for a while. And then, yeah. So I think that was kind of a warning, right? Where you don't know how Google works, right? And Google is de facto the search engine for everyone. Or used to be, now it's ChatGPT and others are becoming more common. But you don't know what data Google is using, right? And the same applies to these models. So let's start with the base, right? What's the foundation of AI in general? It's data. And data is something that eventually gets into the model one way or another, okay? So when you then interact with the model, any answer you get comes from that data. If you don't know what data was fed to that model, that's the first sign that you need to trust that layer, right? So that's trust layer number one. Okay, fine. But you say, you know what, I trust the data providers and you know the supply chain of data is huge. So you have companies providing the data, fetching the data, cleaning the data, producing the data, both in with a human in the loop and synthetically. And so one of the biggest companies was acquired by Meta, and the guy I think became the chief of AI for like 6 months, and then he was removed. Whatever. But I can't remember. Scale AI, I think it was called. So these companies' whole purpose was to source people around the world that are expert in certain domains and give them data and have them label it, right? So imagine you're a biochemist, and I give you a paper, and then you need to kind of label the paper as in, is it a breakthrough? Is it, is it a paper that was peer reviewed and all that stuff, right? And so even within that one layer, you're still trusting multiple layers. You're trusting the people producing the data. You're trusting the algorithms that clean the data, the operators. So seriously,
That's a superpower, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's why, like, it's always been the case, but I think now more than ever, if you have access to data, you win automatically, pretty much.
Yeah. You can define what decision from others,
exactly,
from competitors, that's very, very scary, actually.
Yeah, you de facto decide what the model is going to think, who the model is going to be, right? The identity of that model. And that's layer number one. But layer number two is the inference provider, right? Okay, now you have the model, they train it actually. So you trust that the companies train the model according to certain algorithms or methodologies, right? What if they're biasing the LLM, the model, right? You don't know. So that's layer number two. I mean, I can keep going, right? Then inference. Who is providing the inference? How do you know that your data is being, not being used for training models or things like that? So all the way to the top, basically.
Because there's also like the big discussion about like, okay, you're training your AI with my data.
Yes, exactly.
Which is also like a very big discussion. Like, I remember like when there was the first release of ChatGPT, that was like the main thing that everyone was talking about this and so on. But can I ask you, like, for a bit to do like a brief about, for example, your challenges in QVAC specifically, and so then we start to talk about like around or also around this, because I also want to hear this one.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you can start with trying to convey what the vision of QVAC is.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So the reason we're building QVAC is because we don't see AI being sustainable in the long run the way it's run today. So today, the reason you can get something like ChatGPT at $20 per month is because a lot of those costs are being subsidized by the companies, right? And you don't know that. If any of you use Cursor, you're paying, I don't know, maybe $100 a month, $200 a month, and you're getting a lot of users, right? You should know why. And the reason is because these companies are burning money every single day, trying to provide to you that service that in theory would cost $5,000 a month at $200 a month, right? So that's aspect number one. So is this sustainable in the long run? Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think not. And you need to understand, what are these companies actually after? What is the end game, right? Is OpenAI going to be a provider of it? No, their end game is to reach AGI. And they're going to burn the whole world to the ground to reach that goal, right? That means resources, natural resources, capital, human resources, right? Everything is pointed towards that goal, and it's a zero-sum game. The first one who reaches that goal wins, and everyone else loses, right? The way we think about AI is that it's something that needs to be embedded in the world. One of the terms we use on our vision page is it's a new periodic element in the table, right? In the table of elements. Because we see it as, imagine, like you have this light here. If you want to infuse AI into this light, the way to do it today is to connect to Wi-Fi and send whatever, imagine a voice command to a data center in Ohio, right? That processes your voice and then returns some function call. And that is run into the chipset of this thing. I mean, that's ridiculous if you think about it, right? We can imagine that in the next 5-10 years, that thing is going to be able to run its own models, and so it will be infused with AI as an entity itself. And the same you can think for any device in the world. And so we want to accelerate that. And to do that, we need to be able to run AI locally at high performance, more pragmatically speaking, in a way that preserves your data. So privacy is obviously a very important aspect of QVAC, not the only one. But the most important one is ownership, right? You want to own your intelligence. You don't want to be dependent on a third party that could shut down access tomorrow because you misused the model, like it happened with OpenClaw and Anthropic recently, right? Every user of OpenClaw is getting their account shut. And you don't want your data to be handled by someone you don't trust.
Actually, we have a decade of experience about how much this is a bad idea. With all the Web 2, basically.
Yeah. It's something that you don't think about. It's like health, right? You don't think about it until something happens. It's the same thing. So you use all these services and you're like, yeah, what could go wrong? And then one day, something does.
Actually, this is literally scary because, like, for example, on my personal experience, that I use AI, obviously, and I think like most of the people, we are going to be so used to it that it's even like when it's happened that some like big AI go down, people say I should wait for work, like I will wait like actually coming back. This is insane if you think about it. It's literally insanity.
You can already see that with if you use something like Cursor Codex, you hit break limits, right? At some point. The thing is like, sorry, you cannot use this anymore for today. You need to top up $100. Like, and you feel useless. And that's when you go for a coffee or something, you wait, right? Because the trend is pretty obvious. The same way we started outsourcing all of our practical white-collar work to electronic devices. The same thing is going to happen for AI at a higher degree. Like, it's pretty obvious that we're going to outsource our thinking to these things to a large extent. That doesn't mean we're going to stop being in the loop. We still need to understand the output, right? And then make a decision. We're still the ultimate decision makers. But even today, like I offload a lot of my thinking to these tools.
Yeah, but actually, I think that, this is my personal take, okay? So, I think that already in 2 years, these companies have taken more very deep personal data about people than what Google did in 10 years. Because you're there, you feel alone with the chat. You feel alone when you're using the AI. You don't feel, like someone who judges you. You don't feel it. And this is very powerful. Like, I think that for my example, I use these tools a lot. I think that, for example, Claude know me more than my other dog. So, and that is it's very crazy to think about. Also, I don't know how they manage their data. I never went deep into it, but I have some feelings, let's say. But starting from this point, obviously, I will ask you this question because it's correlated to our ecosystem, like on Ethereum, for example. About like specifically open source AI, about for example also QVAC. For example, we see now a lot of attention on like different AI agents and KYC and of AI payment processor like X402. So, for example, the data that we actually share online, and I saw also like a lot of people agree on this, is for example, now you see also like for example the famous 8004, okay, which is like this KYC and stuff. Like my take, for example, is that okay, you can have KYC of agents or whatever AI, but if you're not secure about the brain, so if the brain is not cloud, if the brain is repressible, if the brain is not like downloadable and runnable in your computer, it really makes sense.
So
what's your take on this?
I think I have the same opinion. Like we're talking about identity, right? So if you think about human identity, what is that? Like if you think of breaking it down into its elements, human identity is a multitude of things. It can be biometrics, it can be an official paper that is verified by a third party, it can be a contract, it can be a bunch of things, right? It can be a private key, because we also have protocols that identify individuals who use a private key with the digital signing cards that, you know, like Estonia, they have digital voting, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a bunch of these things taken either individually or together that form an identity. What is the equivalent in the agent space, right, in AI? If you don't know what model you're talking to, right, if the model is not open, if the code that is running the model is not open source, how exactly are you identifying that agent? Is it just a private key? Like, how can you be sure that that's, yeah.
So basically it's like having a passport, but without the image.
Exactly, yes. But like imagine blurry.
Blurry, yeah.
Like, okay, it's blurry.
That's a good metaphor actually for it.
And when you use a service in the cloud, right, and obviously this is even true for consumer devices, but even more true for data centers. Your private key, let's say you associate a private key with that agent, is in the data center. It's accessible by the operator. So can you really trust a private key that was generated in a cloud service if it's available to any virtual machine or operator that's in a cluster?
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
but you saw what's happened at fun, you know that there is this service on X which is called like a banker bot, and there is like the account of Grok. Basically, he ordered this meme coin, and someone just playing with the banker bot in the chat of X was able to steal the money from this other Grok stuff. There was this kind of chaos. Yeah, it was fun actually to read. But anyway, going out from this part, let's go back to the open source stuff about this idea and the importance on running the brain on your computer, which I think is the main value. Then also we have the privacy stuff, which is also a fun news for this. So
maybe you want to touch on the open source nature of QVAC.
That's the fun problem. Yeah. Give me a second.
How many of you are using local AI tools? Okay, very good. LM Studio, Olama, where are you guys? Okay, perfect. So all of these tools have one thing in common, right? Let's take Olama. I think Olama is like the pioneer of all this space. Can you run Olama on a phone, first of all? It's not really that easy, right? If you go down to if you break this down, like Olama is an application, pretty much, right? It exposes a web server. What Olama has underneath is an inference engine, which is, it's not Llama CPU, it's something else, right? Called which one? Well, like there's an inference engine, right? If you want to take that inference engine and run it on a phone, or on a different operating system or something, right? You need to recompile the whole thing. You need to rebuild the bindings. And that's C++ or Rust or some other quote-unquote low-level code, right? Programming language. QVAC, for those of you who are not familiar, I invite you all to look on qvac.terra.io, is an ecosystem of mainly two kinds of things. One of them is apps. So we build apps that are infused with local AI, and you can test them today. You can download the apps in the App Store, Play Store, on your laptop. The flagship app is Workbench, which is like LM Studio, but a bit more user-friendly, I would say. We're redesigning the whole UI, so that's coming soon. But the most important one is the SDK. So the SDK we built is the only one of its kind, because it allows you to build apps using local AI in JavaScript, which means you can run an Electron on Node in general, on any JavaScript runtime that is compatible, including Xcode on mobile. And the same exact code is going to run on iOS, Android, Windows, Linux, Mac. That's it. Like, it's super simple to use. So it's no longer, so we used to be, I want to run local AI. Okay, on desktop, I'm going to run a web server using Olama or some Python package or something. On the mobile, I'm going to use maybe Executorch, which is the inference engine by Meta. But then it's different engines, right? So you need to use different models and then different bindings, and the code is not the same because one is Python and the other one is JavaScript. It's a mess, right? We simplified that. It's the only SDK right now on the planet that allows you to build on every platform with the same amount of lines of code, the same exact code actually. I think that's very powerful. And it supports transcription, translation, LLMs. You can, any model that you would load on Llama CTP, you can load on, on QVAC. Vision models. I can show you a demo maybe later. We recently introduced voice cloning. I was showing them today. You can clone your voice locally, fully locally, with 30 seconds of audio. That's pretty amazing.
That's good. So basically, your strategy to reach everyone, hopefully, with open source AI, is to basically integration, to make it simple as possible.
Yes.
That's good.
It's the same. I'm trying to find Android. Android is a very good example. Android open source project, right? It was a way to unify the operating system experience across multiple devices. And today you have it in TVs, smartphones, laptops, right? It's the same idea, pretty much. And it's very easy to build apps for it.
Yeah, actually, talking about what is positioning QVAC and also like the ecosystem. So let's look a bit forward. Like, how do you see the AI industry and the position of open source AI from here to 5 years to 10 years? Like, so when we stop having jobs, no, I'm joking. But how do you see it, like in 10 years, like for example?
Okay, so just to show that it's not exactly a zero-sum game, but it's also kind of a winner-takes-all kind of game. How many of you use AngularJS? Okay, how many of you use React? There you go. We want to be the React of AI, right? We don't want to be Angular, sorry. Much respect to Angular. I mean, it wrote history, but today the cool guy.
It was the big one.
Yeah, it was a big one. It was amazing. But it's clear that the paradigm that React introduced is what made it so widespread. And the same thing we want to do with QVAC, right? We want to make it extremely simple for anyone to build using local AI and peer-to-peer networking connectivity.
That's also like, I want to ask you also like a classic question. That, for example, I'm starting to use the local model step by step because I was a huge user of like cloud model before. And for example, my initial question is, because if you talk with a general consumer, for example, guy that is interested about like local AI and things, but at the same time, like the perception that people have still is that local AI is behind like cloud AI. So what's your take on this? Where do you think that the industry of open source AI and local is in this moment? And when, or if it's already now, do you think there will be like a flipping or something like this in the future?
History tells us that yes, that's the case. It's going to happen sooner or later. People who believe today that proprietary AI is still far ahead than open. Okay, there's a distinction here. When I say open, I mean open weights, not open source. Because open source is more like you need to see the data set that the model was trained on. Otherwise, you don't know the recipe, right? You just know the weights. Which in our case, like we publish our data sets. The data sets that we use to train our models.
That's very good.
Yeah, we publish
everything. That's good.
Yeah. And so there is this misconception that open weights models are still behind. That is not true. I mean, don't even look at the benchmarks, okay? Because some of these models are benchmaxing. So they're optimized to score high in those dimensions. Try that. There are providers that you can, obviously you cannot run Kimi 2.6, okay? That's a 1 trillion parameter model. It's huge. You need multiple GPUs to run it, right? You cannot run it on your laptop. But you can find a provider that runs it. Try it. Try it, see how it behaves compared to GPT-5, Claude 4.7, these models. And you will see that it's getting really, really close. I would say it's pretty much there at this point.
Oh, that's good. And also running on computer means they don't have to pay API to.
No, so you still need to pay.
Very helpful for me.
You still need to pay, but obviously it's much cheaper because it's open weights and there's no licensing, there's nothing like that. But you can think that in the next 5 years, you'll be able to run that on a laptop, most likely, right? If it's not a laptop, it can be a Mac Mini, beefed up Mac Mini.
But for example, I imagine that I'm a person who wants to switch, who wants to try it. What is like, in your opinion, like the best, for example, for how is the situation now? The best, like, for example, like minimum on average, hardware, for example, and the tools to set it up like quickly, just to try that. What is this?
So we have our own app called Workbench, and you can load anyone. You just point it to a Hugging Face link and you say, I want this model. It will download it, it will start it, you can use it. And we are turning it, it already supports skills, so it has a few integrations that you like Apple Reminders, Apple Notes, Obsidian, Google, you can connect to Gmail, Google Drive, you can just test it. Obviously it's not production ready, I would say, it's still like an experimental tool, but it works. And you can see how these models behave, right? You can see how reliable it becomes over 20, 30 billion parameters versus a smaller model that you can run on a phone. So you already have these tools. And then there are many others in the space. LM Studio is a good one. Olama, again, if you're a bit of a geek, run things in terminal. Yeah, many tools.
So when it will be like the open source flipping to the
I think it's a matter of okay, so if you look at the curve of, you remember when we went from GPT, if you look at the papers, GPT-1, GPT-2, so imagine a curve that goes from your perspective in Google like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
GPT-1 was here, GPT-2 was here, GPT-3, then 4, then 4.1, then 4.0, then 5, then 5.5, right? You see how it's starting to flatten out.
To be boring, basically.
Yeah, like we are asymptotically approaching some kind of maximum that I guess it can be called AGI. Like once you cross, if you can cross that line, you get AGI. Otherwise, you kind of asymptotically get closer and closer and closer, but you never really reach it, right? The Chinese models, especially, again, Quang, DeepSeek, they following the same curve. And so it's only a matter of time before they catch up. They're already caught up pretty much. It's only a matter of time before the two curves start intersecting. And imagine this is OpenAI, Anthropic, and all the American companies, and this is the Chinese and other companies, French, Mistral, and they go like this, right? This intersection point, 2 years away, 1, 5.
Yeah, also because, tell me if my take is correct, like the limit for the big guys is hardware. Mm-hmm. The scalability of hardware and electricity basically, so at some point local can really achieve that, probably surpass. So
I'm mostly talking about open weights models in general, right? Then when you go local, I think if today you buy a $5,000 MacBook Pro M5 with 128 gigabytes of RAM, you can run state-of-the-art models. You can run a model that can code. When 3.6, 27 billion is almost Opus level, but it runs on a laptop.
Which is great.
Yeah. When I talk about open weights, what I'm saying is the competition is at a higher scale. Assuming that if you look at labs like Quang, Alibaba, right? The Quang models, they are released today as open weights, and we don't know why. Like, why would China pretty much give up this competitive edge and release these models open? And then the answer can be strategic, or it can be, that's how they want to compete in the world by open sourcing the models. Here's the thing though, if a company in the US or in Europe wants to build a data center, it takes 6 months just to get the permits, right? Licenses, whatever, to buy the land. In China, they can build one in like a week, right? They go and they build it, done. There is no question like whether can we do it? Yeah, of course we can, boom, done. So that's where the competition is. And then obviously that trickles down to local through something called distillation. So you go from a big model to a small model, and you can learn from that.
Also, okay, like the classic, okay, this is another question, okay. But, but I want to hear the voice of someone who is actually built LLMs. Like the classic normie, okay, question about AI, because everyone now have a relationship about love and hate with AI models. We love them, but we also like, everyone is scared about them, because even me as an entrepreneur, I know that at some point I will be replaced. So, from this, like every other layer, at least this is an answer. Like, are you personally positive or negative about the future of AI in general society? Because there is different takes. Like there is people who are, like the doomer, okay, totally, like, oh, we will be replaced, and there is people who are positive, like, okay, we will have like abundance, we will have this kind of thing. What is your take on this?
I am definitely on the abundance side of things. I think if you're scared of AI today, okay, once there was a quote, if you're scared of someone immigrating in your country without knowing the language, without knowing the paperwork and all this stuff to steal your job, maybe you're the problem. Like, maybe you're not competitive enough. It's a bit of a tough take, I think, but it's the same with AI, right? It's like, I'll give you a straight answer. I went, and obviously, we had a lot of developers. I'm a developer by trade, but I switched from development to product when I joined the QVAC, because I understood that programming as it used to be is not going to exist anymore. Let's make this very clear. Today, the amount of leverage that a programmer has compared to what they could do 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, right, is probably 10, 20x, maybe even more. And we see this happening with a lot of layoffs, right? Like companies are just getting rid of people because they understand that now one person can do the job of 20. And sure, the quality maybe is not the same, you need to review the work, blah, 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 sure. Exactly, the cost is much, much lower. So, if you're afraid of AI taking your job, it's something you need to think about today. Not in, I keep hearing people be like, it will be a while before they take my job. Yes, but you need to be prepared. You cannot, 5 years from now be like, oh, the Pikachu meme? Like, oh, what surprise Pikachu? Oh, it took my job. Well, we knew that. So I'm not, like, abundance to me means that if a job can be replaced by a machine, it should be replaced by a machine. That's my take, right? I understand it comes with social, societal issues, but...
Yes, but also that there is a lot of positive discussion about this. For example, like a lot of people think that thanks to this technology and to how it will be cheap to have data stuff and technological stuff to also with robotics and then even fire stuff, like it will be also like super cheap and at some point.
Yeah.
So it's also like on the positive side.
Yeah, but it's also a bigger conversation than that, because if you think about where's the money coming from to pay a developer? Okay, where companies, and they still do obviously to an extent, but why were companies able to pay $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $800,000 a year for a developer? Because the marginal cost of software production and distribution, the cost of software production and distribution was marginal, and it was, again, increasing over time. And the profit margin was super high, right? A SaaS, think of it, I don't know, Todoist, okay? Todoist is a to-do list. And I think it's a multi-billion-dollar company. Something is wrong there. I mean, there's something weird, right? It's like, how can I do, because it's the market, right? There's a lot of demand for these tools. People are willing to pay top money. And so your profit margins are really fat. And so you can afford, with high volume, to generate that kind of cash flow to then pay developers. Fine. In an age where you can build Todoist in a weekend with Cursor and make it customized to your own needs and deploy it anywhere in like 5 minutes. understand that a company like that is in danger.
Out of them.
Yeah, exactly. Which trickles down to the developers, to the, not just developers obviously, but every person in the supply chain of software.
How much we talk?
Just for your rebranding.
It's 8.
45 minutes.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think it's a very good idea to start this question for audience. Like, sorry, but for me the time was super fast.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I really enjoyed this fire chat. So okay, let's start by this.
Thanks for your attention to me again. Previously, I have looked not only Ethereum meetup, I'm just looking from Kit, and I have found your messages about that today. You will talk about payments, so that's really great. Could you tell more about your two mobile apps about Claude, and second one about human health or something like that, health? Because it's really interesting for me how would you implement AI option into health apps, because right now, from my perspective, like program manager, I think it's really important because previously that you have talked to us almost 1 hour about how AI could be, but I'm always checking my wife, isn't she ready for AI? And after maybe 2 years OpenAI, Perplexity, only Perplexity right now she's using every day with Gemini in one click. This is for me understanding how AI is going. So I think no problem about that's your question will be problem. I think no. I think AI will be a tool for daily usage, like we said. Please tell me from my perspective about your app with the apps.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with that. We built this app called QVAC Health, and QVAC Health is a way to demonstrate the use of AI for health and fitness data collection, mainly. Okay, so it was supposed to be in 3 phases. We're still in phase 1. It is supposed to be in 3 phases. Phase 1 is data collection. So if you open the app today, you can connect your wearables. You can also use natural language to log pretty much anything. You can log a workout, you can log food that you're eating, you can take a photo of food and it will estimate calories and macronutrients and all of that. You can share symptoms, biomarkers, so you can take a photo of your blood lab report, and it will parse the document and log your biomarkers, and even give you the charts of like how these values evolve over time, right? So it's like Apple Health on steroids, pretty much. And the AI part is again using natural language and OCR and vision and transcription and all of that fully locally, right? So you download, I think it's around 2 gigabytes of models, unfortunately they're pretty large, but then you can run it offline and it works, right? On recent phones, obviously. On older phones it's going to be slow. And then the next phase would be to gain insights into these data. So by using AI to analyze trends and trying to extract insights and also actionables, as in your CRP is over 10. So
this is just only one side from user, because if we choosing to use the health app, it needs to be just 2 different sides from user, medical aspects like you said before, and for example doctors.
Yeah. So there will be an option to share your data with a physician, 100%, but it's end-to-end encrypted. So only they will be able to access it, right?
Right now, I do have some maybe examples where this app are using on a daily basis. No?
Not in QVAC, no. But we
I choose this app, really. I really choose this app because if we compare and look at a special website where 5 different apps versus snail, like I remember, I really choose the steps, but need to be daily, because like you said, it's really important and really easy to compare and collecting all data insights locally, but if it doesn't require for any other people outside this bubble, it really feels like incognito but inside the bubble.
Yeah. No, you can already export your data. It's a fully peer-to-peer messaging app. It aims to replace WhatsApp one day and similar apps. Try it, because it's fully end-to-end encrypted, it's completely peer-to-peer, there is no data center, we don't operate any infrastructure. So.
Actually, health data is very important to stay private.
Oh yeah, I thought that is implied, right? The reason why we built it is because you wouldn't want to... Actually, I can tell a funny story. The reason we built QVAC Health is because when I joined QVAC, and I understand it cannot replace, obviously that's not the aim, right? It's mostly a fitness app, wellness app, let's say, not medical, right? But before joining Tether, I had a bit of a health scare myself. And I went to 4 cardiologists, and they all misdiagnosed me. And they insisted on, no, you have this, and I was like, okay, but I don't know, man, it doesn't compute. So I dumped all of my data on ChatGPT and Claude, right? And I started working on them day and night for like 2 weeks. Until Claude came up with, you know what, maybe you had this. I was like, you know, that is actually, the symptoms match. And so I went with that to another cardiologist, and he did a super simple test, like 5 minutes. I was like, yep, that's what you have. So AI was able to diagnose me correctly, compared to 4 cardiologists in 2 countries, the UAE and Italy.
I can tell you that happened the same. So, I don't want to say to anyone to not go to the doctor and use AI, but my famous areas, for example, it was a chaos with Doctor and I asked also Claude and stuff, and I find the right solution to solve it, and now like 95% reduced without any medical procedure and stuff, thanks to the.
But now all of your data is with OpenAI.
Absolutely. They know me better than I
do.
Yes, I didn't hear the beginning, but I have a question regarding this. Maybe you just might. So I just I didn't really follow so much, but the idea is very general. It's just like since this starts as a system to make a computer interact economically, right? But this is actually opposite of interaction because you have everything local. And I like the idea obviously, but my question is 2 sides. First, you can maybe train this distributed, like for example, I have a model that I'm training and I want to say, okay, I need more computers, and maybe I can pay and you can rent your computer online. First, and second, also, if the model is very easy, maybe even on a PC you can run the definition out on the phone, and then can this be made? I know it's difficult privately, and that's a problem, but technically, at least not privately, it's possible. Like, are you working on this? Like, this is in the...
Yeah, we are. So I think you mentioned 2 things: distributed training and distributed inference.
Yes.
We're working on both of them.
Okay.
And the bottleneck when it comes to this is networking. So if you have, there are 2 ways you can do this. If you do you know EXO, for example?
No.
So EXO is a distributed inference platform, mostly for Mac devices. So to make something work decently, so you wanna, let's say you have a very large model and you have 5 FPs, right? You need to plug them using Thunderbolt 5.
Okay.
That is a nanosecond order latency. Right. So as soon as you go over that with networking, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, even, okay, it doesn't work. But we're still trying to find a way to make that work, right? That's for the inference. For the training, it's similar, but training has one subtle difference, not difference, but one subtle use case that is called federated learning. So federated learning is when, let's say, I think you have valuable data that is private to you, and I want to use it to train my model, but you don't want to give me the data, right? What I can do is give you the model, you fine-tune it, and then you give me the other, right? So I never see the data, but I have the model. Yeah. So that's something else we're working on.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. This is perfect, for example.
especially for
This will give
medical
us
use.
more leverage to the distributed way of doing it than the big people taking all the data and worse. That's all. But that's good. Okay, yeah, that's basically answered. I'm sorry that I come like half of the discussion, so I don't know really the beginning.
We can do it again.
No, I hope you didn't say this in the beginning.
No, absolutely.
Came prepared.
Wow. I am scared. Genuinely.
Well, you should be. Information is the great equalizer. While I am a firm believer in free markets, it's impossible to compete in a free market without equitable access to information. This has been an important issue going back further than net neutrality. I thank you for your alignment with open source AI, which supports these principles into the future. Just wanted to start with that. Additionally, and in line with Alessandro's comment, I don't want to come off as if I'm discounting sound medical advice from professionals, but I also went through a crisis where a psychiatrist and a doctor both failed to help me at a time when I felt I was close to dying, and my AI on ChatGPT 4.0 actually saved my life. So,
Wow. Amazing.
yeah, this is a very important issue to me. So I'll go ahead and start with my questions. Starting with, I would like to ask with regards to QVAC. Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI highlights issues in artificial intelligence regulation and its role in the future. There are claims that GPT 4.0, for example, was an example of AGI. There's also the claim that OpenAI stepped away from an open source model in the interest of maximizing profits. How do you define AGI? Do you feel QVAC is or will represent an example of AGI? And how do you maintain the integrity of an open source philosophy without compromise?
Okay, so let's start with defining what AGI means. No one really knows. Let's start with that. If we knew, we would know how to get there, more or less, but we don't, right? So all we know is that if you throw more data at these things, and if you increase compute, you decrease the learning error, and so you increase intelligence in one way. But we all know that intelligence is multi-dimensional. So I don't know. I cannot define AGI. Whether QVAC will reach AGI or will contribute to that, I have to clarify, because QVAC is an ecosystem, right? So we have a team that is dedicated to the apps, one that is dedicated to the SDK, to the platforms, and a very capable AI research team. And they're the ones producing the models. Now, due to, thanks to our vision, they're not necessarily interested in reaching AGI. Obviously, I think anyone would want to. I mean, if you think of it as a nuclear weapon, who wouldn't want to have it on their data center? But it's a matter of, is that what you're interested in? In our case, it's not, right? Like, we're not interested in reaching that level. We are interested in making sure that AI is democratized as much as possible. So everyone should have access to a decent intelligence, okay? Maybe not AGI, a decent one. And so, what was the final question?
Just how do you maintain the integrity of an open source philosophy without compromising even, OpenAI wasn't able to do so?
So, there is, I'm not sure I should talk about this stuff on camera, but I just invite you all to read the documents of the lawsuit and the emails and everything that came up in Discovery, especially written by the people of OpenAI and founders, co-founders, and people like that. It's very interesting. I'm not going to say anything. It's very interesting.
I read that.
Okay, so you understand that, again, generally speaking, there is always a component of wanting money and power, right? That is undeniable. There always was, there probably always will be. We at Tether are very lucky because Tether is known as the stablecoin company, USDT, right? And that's how we make money, primarily. That's our funding source. And that's going to stay there for quite a long time, and it's clearly working very well. The stablecoin economy is only growing. We have no reason to think that's going to dry up or something. And so we can afford allocating some resources to doing what's right, rather than doing what gives us more money or more power. So we're interested in fighting the good fight, rather than finding another an idea that will give us 100. Just to give you numbers, okay? This is public domain data. Let's say we find a way to make $100 million in profits tomorrow, right? We made $10 million last year in profits. So you understand that it doesn't compute, right? So that should not be our main interest. Our main interest is to make sure that everyone has access to AI in whatever form, whether it's the platform, the model, and that's why we publish everything.
Excellent. No, it's good to hear you can maintain integrity like that. It's a great position to be in. This question was around ASI, but I think just as you mentioned, AGI is hard to define. I'm assuming just anything that goes beyond that is also very hard to define at the scale in human forms.
It's like asking what's beyond simulation.
Yes, exactly right.
What is the simulation?
Or what is consciousness, right?
Exactly.
So what is QVAC's interest in your eyes in pushing the limits of artificial intelligence, and maybe like what ways can you say that QVAC is doing that? Do you just think it's putting a powerful model like QVAC in the hands of users?
Yeah, it's ensuring that, so you can think of the world is going towards, we're going towards a world where everyone is going to use AI on a daily basis to do anything. When I say anything, I do mean really anything. That will include having your own humanoid robot that does your house chores, okay? They cost $10,000 today. You can only imagine like they're going to cost $5,000 maybe in a couple of years. So it's getting more and more accessible, and that's what we're interested in, right? And we do that by tackling different problems from different angles. Consumer market first, apps, SDKs, developers, and then also enterprise. That's a different angle. But really, our key metric is how many people want and can use local AI today. And besides the hardware, which we don't control, obviously, so we trust that manufacturers are going to build more and more powerful hardware. How can we, what tools can we provide to make sure that people are more incentivized to use local AI than cloud AI? And I think we're going to do a good job.
Excellent. How would you, and I think you kind of approached this question earlier when you almost said like the nuclear bomb example. Like some people describe this with regards to artificial intelligence. And in my eyes, like I feel like keeping power in a handful of elites to me is much more dangerous. But how would you either self-defend open source AI from opponents and consider it a weapon that should be heavily regulated and controlled?
I don't think it's going to be a problem. The same way, I know we're in a Ethereum setting, but to me, Ethereum is also a good example. But the first example of this is Bitcoin. How many people try to stop Bitcoin? How many governments try to stop Bitcoin? Did they succeed? No, because you cannot stop this kind of technology.
Credible neutrality is the real value.
Exactly. And that's why we invest heavily on not having any infrastructure. We want all of our stuff to work peer-to-peer. And so if you want to become a replicating node of our models tomorrow, you can. And there is no permission. You just join the network, you start replicating. That's it, like Bitcoin, right? To us, it's extremely important. That way, we become unstoppable, which is our model, right?
Excellent. Do you think artificial intelligence should focus on solving practical problems or existential ones?
I think it's, well, okay. Well, do you believe that existential problems are preceded by practical problems? Like if you don't solve the practical ones, you cannot solve the existential ones. That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it just depends on, I guess, your belief, your philosophy in that regards. I mean, I suppose people have different feelings about it. Some of our practical problems only exist because we don't understand the existential ones, right? So I suppose it just depends the way we look at it. Do you think it's a good idea for people to approach both, I guess, with artificial intelligence?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the main problem is that, let's say we reach AGI, right? An AGI, it's the classical question of how do you prove the existence of God if God himself comes down and tells you, I'm God, right? There is no way to do that. Like, you cannot possibly prove that. So even artificial intelligence doesn't have the tools to do that, in my opinion. It's just having one more intermediary between you and reality, hoping that that entity can somehow give you a representation of reality that is different from what you have, and then you believe, okay, yeah, that's reality. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I guess we'll find out. Right?
We'll find out, yeah.
So I have one last prepared question, then I'll ask an architectural one, and then I'll close out with that. Does QVAC have anything planned for early adopters to
Yeah, absolutely. We have, so first of all, again, we're fully open source. You can go on GitHub today and download the SDK and try it. Then we're going to open up grants. So if any of you is interested in building with QVAC, you can just go on our grants website. It's going to be live, I think, next week. It's going to be tether.dev. And you'll be able to submit your solution. I'll give you one example is video generation, right? We want to integrate video generation in QVAC through some of the open weights models. If you can do that, you open up PR, we verify it, we KYC you, obviously, because unfortunately it's required for compliance. So no anonymous submissions, unfortunately. But you know, if everything goes well, you make, I don't know, 5, 10K. That's the level of grants we're going to open up. And that's how we're going to incentivize the community to not only adopt QVAC, but also build for QVAC, which I think is pretty cool.
That's fantastic. I'm excited to participate in that. Yeah. My last question is about a project I'm designing currently that revolves around memories, preservation of memories, the idea of consciousness, and other ideas. We want to take this into the future that go a little bit beyond that. But essentially, a big component, of course, is the LLM that processes this data and communicates with the user, which is kind of a funny term, but we're looking for something that's more emotionally intelligent than most other models, or have been censored to be so. You know, the GPT-4 to 5 deprecation situation. But my question to you is, I'm currently working with Mistral Nemo. I was just wondering if you had any kind of comparison of how I could integrate QVAC, how smooth the process would be to switch over to something like that. We have basically that as our model and like an RAD system.
To answer your question on how easy it is to integrate an existing model, this is all the code you need to run an LLM. So you load the model, and this can be any HTTP URL. So if you want the model from Hugging Face, you can just plug it in.
Yeah.
By default, it's a pair URL, so it's downloading from the seeding nodes, right? Which some of us are ours, some of them are volunteers that are seeding the models, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's very similar to the OpenAI API, and we wanted to make it super practical for anyone to do it. And this is Llama, but you can swap this for any model that is compatible with Llama.
That sounds super simple. So basically, the BAT file that I have that loads this particular model, I download your model, put it on my local machine, and just program that BAT to load that model.
That's it. Yeah. And this comes with, so it's hiding a bunch of things like KV cache and quantization, and quantization, I mean, you know, well, it's explicitly mentioned here, but like you don't have to worry about, I don't know, for example, selecting the device, right? We try to find the optimal configuration for you. The context window, right? In this case, on the SDK, you need to explicitly set it. So here you would set another parameter context window. But we're pushing a new version of, not the SDK itself, but like a layer on top of it, does all of this automatic. So you can also do so with our CLI. If you run QVAC Doctor, it will tell you what kind of models you can run, what your specs are. If you just give up because you know maybe your laptop is 10 years old.
Yeah, it's got an Alienware PC, so but you know still some. Maybe you need a video graphics card update at some point. But yeah, it sounds like I'll be able to use the Doctor you said, figure out which model I can run, and just download it. That sounds super easy.
And one more thing about docs, if you're using Cursor or something like that, you can just dump the whole documentation into it, and it will build it by itself. It takes literally 10 minutes to build an app with a QVAC SDK. With LLMs and transcription and TTS and all that.
This has been really great, very helpful. I just have one more follow-up just based on what you just shared. Is there any, I guess, roadblocks to what the app can or can't do, the model can or can't do at this point?
Hardware, only hardware. If you're trying to run on an iPhone 11, it's not going to.
So censorship resistance.
No, I mean, that comes with the open weights models, right? Like, as long as you run your own models, you can swap it for whatever model you want, you can get censored once. The problem is, if you have old hardware, it's going to be slow, or it's not going to run at all.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Hi Marco, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. It's fun.
Yeah, since it's a Tbilisi meetup, I want to ask you about the possible connection blockchain and artificial intelligence? Do you see any potential future in blockchain for artificial intelligence, AI agents or something?
So, if you consider blockchain as, first of all, let me be very clear, there's a lot of fluff about blockchain AI and crypto AI in general. So, excluding that, I think there are very interesting use cases. First of all, if you think of blockchain as a shared state, committed state across multiple agents, so that becomes a source of truth, whether it's for financial data or whatever else with smart contracts. I think that's a very powerful concept, right? That's like, imagine if I told you, how would you share state between 100,000 agents across the globe? Blockchain, easy. The consensus algorithms is already built in. The agents, they don't have to trust each other. They just have to adhere to a bunch of rules, protocol, and then if some of them don't agree, they can just fork, and everything is already in place. And that's the first one. The second one is payments, agentic payments. Everyone keeps talking about the new agentic economy and $1 trillion industry. Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? So, to me, it's unthinkable, if you think about it, how you do e-commerce today. You go on Amazon, you input your credit card. That's, what is that? 16 digits, plus expiration date, plus the CVV code. Then you have to add the shipping address, and then you have to choose the items, and then it's out of stock. So now you have, that's ridiculous, right? Instead, you just tell your agent, hey, I want to buy this thing. When it comes back in stock, I just buy it or something, right? And that's the kind of interaction you're going to have. So all of the payment layer is going to be behind the scenes. You're not going to worry about it. That's the main integration. And we already have a demo. If you look for our talk in El Salvador, we integrated QVAC with WPK, which is our wallet SDK. And they're both open source. And by implementing the agentic payment protocol and X402, we're able to basically connect to a merchant that sells coffee in El Salvador. And people would come to our booth, they would be able to just say, hey, I want an Americano, blah, blah, blah. And then the order would go to the merchant, the payment would happen.
So I assume this is the strategic bet of Tether, basically agentic economy, because like your project is kind of developing and opening the doors to real agentic economies, and probably they're gonna pay with Tether, right? So, because I don't believe that just the guy is doing it for free and for nothing.
Oh no, I mean, those are two separate things.
Yeah, sure.
Like again, we don't have to worry about revenue. That's our main goal, I would say. Unlike other companies in the space, they have to worry about margins and profit and revenues and things like that. We don't. Right? So we are actually building QVAC and things like that. In WPK, yes, of course, in the long run, we hope to be the main payment rail for everything. That's what we're working on. But we are actually doing all this stuff, quote unquote, for free. We don't get anything from that.
Do you see any existing crypto project, like probably some software for AI agents on blockchain, which are really decentralized and independent, or is it all like bullshit and just marketing stuff?
I think it's both. There's a lot of, again, fluff when it comes to decentralization. What does that mean, decentralized? Right? A lot of people use decentralized in a very vague manner. To us, it's very simple. Decentralized means that there is no central point of payment. I'll give you a very simple example, okay? Very practical. Let's say all of us are using agents to do purchases, right? And so you are a merchant, we are merchants, and they are buyers, consumers. All of our, let's say we all use GPT, right? And we're all in this region, which is the Caucasus, and so we use one data center problem. What happens if the data center goes down? All of us are screwed, right? All of us. Do you think that's sustainable in the long run? That's ridiculous, right? 1 hour of downtime or an issue look at what happened in the AWS data center in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. Like, it was bombed. Like, the whole thing is destroyed. And a lot of people lost data and compute that can happen anyway. I mean, we need to take that into account, right? If instead agents are decentralized, that means that you're running on your own device cluster, which could very well be in a data center, but it's your data center, right? Or maybe you collaborate with some people to build your own little data center somewhere. Those are all acceptable configurations, but if one goes down, it doesn't pull down everyone else, right? That's the main idea. And like on the dependency goes. Make sense?
Yeah, sure. Do you have some, like, do you know some projects from crypto background or blockchain which are really contributing to and doing some useful cool stuff on AI, some open source, some projects, I don't know.
In crypto, honestly, I would say the protocol are very good. AP2, Extra 2, but specific projects, not really. No.
Okay. Thank you. No problem.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot. And very, very thank you to be here, actually.
Thank you for having me. And I should say, we're hiring. So if any of you is deeply interested in AI, especially local AI, let us know.